Congressman Nadler, what do we need to do?
We need to pass a good version of this bill. We need to pass. I mean, the president outlined many of the really good provisions of this of the proposal that we're making. The fact that people with health insurance will be guaranteed against losing it if they should lose their job, will be guaranteed against the insurance company suddenly withdrawing the coverage if they get really sick, will be guaranteed against having to pay a huge out-of-pocket costs if they get really sick and being bankrupted even when they thought they had good insurance. All of these are excellent reforms. And at the same time, the president pointed out that for people who don't have insurance, for people who don't have insurance from their employer, for self-employed people, for unemployed people, for people with small businesses.
I can't get insurance for talk radio news service.
Well, in that case, the bill will provide a new marketplace where we will have private insurance companies and a government public plan bid for your business, but it will be with a group rate, 30 million people in this one group, so it'll be much cheaper than the individual insurance you could try to purchase now.
Right, they did a bait and switch on me, $277, and then when it came back, it was $700 a month. I'm the only old bat in my company.
Well, one of the benefits of the public option that the president mentioned is it will compete with the private insurance companies in the exchange, and that will really, or should really, hold costs down and hold premiums down. And it's the major thing that will in this bill, which is why it's so important.
Will Senate Finance completely destroy that?
The Senate Finance Committee would, but they're not going to get their way.
Really? You're the first one I've heard say that.
Well, I think not. I think the House will insist on the public option. I don't think a bill without a public option can pass the House. And the Senate Finance Committee is not the only committee in the Senate.
Speaker Pelosi said something at the White House the other day about maybe public option being a plan B if the insurance companies didn't behave themselves in the initial sort of part of the bill. It would be written in.
No, well, the whole exchange will take about 3 years to set up. I think it's supposed to go into effect in 2013, and that will include the public option. The public option is not a backstop. The whole bill is a backstop for the fact that the current system isn't working for many people. I mean, we now have all these private insurance companies, and the premiums are going up, are increasing at 3.5 or 4 times faster than inflation.
What do I have? Health? My individual's health, something in New York City, I pay $1,300 a month. Personal insurance.
Well, that's a lot of money, but you will now, under this bill, be able to go to an exchange, that is to say a government-regulated market, and in that market, the private companies and the public option will bid for your business, and they'll bid for not just your business as an individual, but for 30 million people or so, and the result will be much cheaper rates and better service. At least that's what we think happens when you have real competition.
One last question. One place that I disagree with many Democrats is the issue of tort reform and malpractice. I mean, it is killing people. But a lot of Democrats don't want to take that on. It's sort of a holy rail.
Well, it's a complicated issue, and certainly much of what people have wanted to do, to put limits on pain and suffering charges, put limits on legal fees. What that would do would be to restrict the ability of people who've been legitimately injured to get into court or to be made whole for their injuries, and certainly I'm opposed to that. On the other hand, there are things you can do in tort. And by the way, let me just also put it in perspective. The cost of malpractice is a little under 0.5% of medical costs. It's 0.46% of medical costs. So put that in perspective. And note that when Texas a few years ago put very strict limits on pain and suffering damages and did everything the tort reform people wanted to do, it had essentially no impact on insurance rates. None. Having said that, there are things we can do because doctors have a real problem with very skyrocketing malpractice rates. There are two basic things you can do. One suggestion was made that we ought to look at carefully is to say, all right, these are best practices, for certain procedures, and if you do that, there's a rebuttable presumption that you should not be sued if you follow these procedures, and that might help. But the other thing that nobody talks about is that every study has shown that 4% of the doctors cause about 70 or 80% of the payouts in malpractice. What that means is that there are a few doctors who are practicing, A, who are injuring and killing people and who oughtn't to be allowed to practice for that reason, and B, who are causing all the payouts.
Or they're plastic surgeons and they get an enormous amount because people are supposedly unhappy.
Well, they get an enormous amount of what?
Malpractice because people, they don't like their eye job or the...
But then I'm talking about the payouts, not the lawsuits. Not the lawsuits. There's a small number of people, about 4% of doctors, who are causing 70, 80%, whatever the figure is, I forget, of the payouts, which means that if you properly discipline these doctors, and you said then the malpractice rates for the other 96% of doctors would go down, and you wouldn't be injuring people. So it's a question not of changing the law in this respect, but of enforcing the law and making sure that incompetent doctors aren't practicing on people.
Wow. I want to get you to write a book.
Well, it's been suggested.
Thank you.